I started Barcelona with 37 years old, coming from 4th division. So knowledge is knowledge. If you are able, it doesn't matter. For that reason, Lamine Yamal could not play football with 70 years old, right? So have to wait to 24. And there are players with 56 or 57, they are not able to be managers. So important is the talent. If you are good, it doesn't matter the age.
The best player in the world right now is Lamine Yamal.
Lamine is 18 years old, and for me, he's an unbelievable player. Sometimes you can see it when you see the game again. What he's doing is unbelievable. You know, it's unbelievable. The situation in a 1-against-1 situation, and this is fantastic. But he's only 18 years old, and of course some.
July 13th, 2026, Lamine Yamal turns 19. The gift he receives that day isn't a toy, isn't a message from some star, isn't even something anyone could have bought for him. The gift is that exactly 1 month later, he finds himself in a World Cup final, sharing a pitch with a man whose photograph holding him as a baby has already become part of football folklore, a man he watched on television growing up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Catalonia. This is the story of how a boy from Rocafonda, a district where more than half the population lives below the poverty line, went in just a few years from complete anonymity to being one of the 2 most watched people on the planet in a single summer afternoon. Lamine Yamal Nasraoui Ebana was born on July 13, 2007, in Esplugues de Llobregat, a town in the greater Barcelona area, but he grew up in Mataró, specifically in the Rocafonda neighborhood, one of the poorest and most ethnically diverse districts in all of Catalonia. His parents struggled to make ends meet. Yamal himself later said in an interview with a Spanish radio station that his mother had him when she was just 16 years old, and that his father often went out into the streets looking for whatever he could find just to bring food home in the evening. When he talks today about the pressure he feels on the pitch, he says it isn't even close to real pressure, because real pressure was what he watched his parents go through while he was growing up. Football entered his life almost before he had properly learned to walk. A Barcelona scout noticed him at local tournaments when he was just 6 years old, and at only 7 he officially joined the famous La Masia Academy, the same one that produced some of the greatest players in the club's history. What happened over the following decade represents perhaps the fastest rise through the youth system of a major European club ever recorded. The coaches who guided him through the age categories described him as a child who always ended up playing against older boys, not because anyone specifically planned it that way, but simply because it felt unfair to the other kids his own age to have him playing alongside them. The turning point came on April 29, 2023. Xavi Hernandez, then Barcelona's first-team coach, decided to bring on 15-year-old Yamal against Real Betis in a match Barcelona won comfortably 4-0. Yamal came on in the 83rd minute, replacing Xavi, and with that substitution became the youngest player in the club's history to ever appear for the first team, breaking a record that had stood since 1922. He was exactly 15 years, 9 months, and 16 days old. Nobody at that moment, not even the club's biggest optimists, could have guessed how many more records this kid would break in just the following 2 years. The 2023-24 season turned into a string of historic moments arriving one after another so quickly that journalists could barely keep up. He became the youngest player to ever start a match in La Liga, the youngest player to provide an assist in the Spanish league, the youngest goal scorer in La Liga history when he scored against Granada in October 2023, the youngest player to ever debut for Barcelona in the Champions League against Antwerp, the youngest starter in Champions League history, breaking a record that had stood since 1994, the youngest player to ever appear in a Clásico, and the youngest player to ever score and assist in the same Champions League match. By the time he turned 17, he had accumulated more than 15 separate records tied purely to his youth, a stat line that sounds almost invented when listed all at once. But Yamal wasn't just a statistical curiosity, a kid who happened to rack up records simply because he got an early chance. What set him apart from the countless other young talents who appear and disappear was how composed he looked in moments that would paralyze players twice his age. His style was recognizable from the very start. A left-footed forward playing on the right wing so that every touch naturally curled him inward toward the goal instead of out toward the byline, with a dribbling style that recalled the players who had inspired him as a child more than anyone from his own generation. His international career followed an identical pattern of accelerated, record-breaking success. He made his senior debut for Spain on September 8, 2023, against Georgia, coming on in the 44th minute. He was 16 years and 57 days old, making him the youngest player to ever appear for Spain's senior national team, breaking the record held by his Barcelona teammate Xavi. But he didn't stop there. In that same match, in the 74th minute, he scored a goal too, becoming the youngest goal scorer in the history of the Spanish national team at the same time. In a single evening, he broke two historic records at once in a match Spain won 7-1. The summer of 2024 brought a moment that will forever be etched into the history of European football. At the European Championship in Germany, Yamal became the youngest player to ever appear at a Euro at 16 years and 338 days old. Throughout the tournament, he kept stunning the world, including a spectacular goal from an extremely tight angle against France in the semi-final, a goal immediately ranked among the greatest individual goals in European Championship history. And then came a date that sounds almost unreal. The night before the Euro final against England, Yamal turned 17. The very next day, as a 17-year-old, he walked out onto the pitch for the final of the continent's biggest tournament and won the title with Spain, becoming in the same moment the youngest player to ever appear in the final of a major international tournament. What followed at club level afterward was just as impressive, even if perhaps less spectacular in any single moment. The 2024-25 season brought him domestic silverware, winning the Copa del Rey, the Spanish Super Cup, and the La Liga title with Barcelona, while at the same time he became the first player in history to win the Copa Trophy, awarded to the world's best player under the age of 21 in 2 consecutive years, 2024 and 2025. The club, as a mark of recognition of his importance, handed him the famous number 10 shirt at just 17 years old, a shirt worn throughout the club's history by some of the greatest players ever, including a man whose own path he was now, in a way, retracing at an accelerated pace. All of this led into the summer of 2026, and the World Cup played across the United States, Mexico, and Canada, Yamal's first World Cup. At 19 years old, despite a quad injury that had bothered him that spring, Yamal was one of the central figures of a Spanish national team that moved through the tournament with barely a single weak point. Spain beat Belgium 2-1 in the quarterfinal, then produced perhaps the most impressive performance of the entire tournament in the semifinal, beating France 2-0, a team whose attack had looked unstoppable up to that point. Across 7 matches at the tournament, Spain conceded just a single goal total, a defensive record rarely seen at a World Cup. The final, played on July 19, 2026, at the stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, put Yamal face-to-face with the man whose photograph, taken when Yamal was just a baby, had followed him his entire life. A man who had been his idol growing up and who, in the days before the match itself, publicly called him a tremendous player despite being his opponent that day. The match was a tactical battle to its core. Argentina failed to register a single shot on target through the entire first half, while Yamal, with 26 touches of the ball compared to just 15 for his childhood idol, was by far the more active player on the pitch. The match went all the way to extra time. Enzo Fernandez picked up a second yellow card and left Argentina down to 10 men. And then, in the 106th minute, Ferran Torres, assisted by Nico Williams, scored the goal that decided the new champion of the world. With that goal, Spain became world champions for the second time in its history, for the first time since 2010 when it had also needed extra time to get there. For Lamine Yamal, the boy from Rocafonda, this represented the crowning moment of an already unreal string of records. At 19 years old, he became the 3rd youngest finalist in World Cup history, and that just 3 years after making his debut for his club's first team. A path that takes most players an entire career to walk. He had covered before he was even old enough to legally drink in most countries in the world. What makes this story remarkable isn't just the speed at which the records kept coming, but the context it all came from. A boy whose family could barely make ends meet, from a neighborhood where poverty is a daily reality for half the population, arrived at a moment when the entire world was watching him stand on a pitch across from the man whose photo holding him as a baby the whole internet had shared just days before the match. From Rocafonda to a World Cup final, from a napkin that once secured a contract for another boy from a poor family to the number 10 now on his own back, the story of Lamine Yamal is proof that football at its very best still manages to be exactly what it always promised to be. A road that can lead anywhere from wherever you start, as long as you have the ball, the courage, and sometimes just a bit of luck to be noticed on the right pitch at the right moment.